Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining our webinar today on the Solar Energy Technologies Office's Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Funding Solicitation. We're here today to give potential applicants an overview of the solicitation, advice from prior applicants, and resources for where you can find help. So just a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we get started. We are recording this webinar and we will distribute the slides and recording to all registrants. And we ask that everyone please keep your lines muted and use the chat button to send questions to the host, and we will go over all of the questions during the discussion portion of our event. The Clean Energy Business Network is the small business voice of the clean energy economy. We work to enhance opportunities for small and mid-sized clean energy technology and service providers through policy support, market and technology education, and business development assistance. Our network spans more than 5,000 small and mid-sized business leaders across all 50 states and a very diverse range of technologies. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. On today's webinar, we're going to start with a brief orientation on how the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs work. Then we're going to hear from Peter Lobocaro, who is a program analyst at the Solar Energy Technologies Office, to learn more about the CEDO's SBIR FY21 solicitation. Then we're going to hear some insights from a couple of prior SBIR awardees who have successfully gone on to receive 2 rounds of SBIR funding. And then finally, we're going to cover some resources where you can find help on your application, including hearing from one of our fellow power connectors, Frank Yang, who is partner at ADL Ventures. And then finally, we're going to turn to a panel discussion with all of our speakers to tell you more about the benefits of the SBIR program, as well as some advice. So let's start with a brief overview of the program. The SBIR was established by Congress in 1982 and is the federal government's largest annual funding opportunity available exclusively to startups and small businesses. It's monitored and coordinated by the U.S. Small Business Administration, and awards are administered by 11 federal research agencies, each of which is obligated by Congress to set aside 3.65% of its extramural federal research and development budget for these awards. The vast majority of those go to the SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research Awards, which are available to small businesses, and a small portion goes to Small Business Technology Transfer Awards, which are generally a partnership between small businesses and a university. And so just for brevity for the remainder of this webinar, I will typically refer to this program collectively as SBIR. The agencies typically issue 1 or 2 funding notices each year, and topics can be very broad or very narrow. In the case of this solar SBIR solicitation, it's kind of an intermediate. It is focused exclusively on solar, but the range of technologies, solar technologies that will be considered is very broad. So a few parameters to help you better understand limitations for how you can use the program, as well as its benefits. The funds must be spent almost exclusively on R&D expenses, which can include salary. And one of the greatest things about SBIR is that it's non-dilutive capital. You're not giving up any equity in your company in exchange for this funding. And additionally, I will say that this program really helps you validate your technology and become much more attractive to prospective investors down the road. And we'll hear a little bit more about that from our speakers. The program is divided into multiple phases with the goal of graduating you to new technology commercialization at the end. So phase one, is generally on the order of around $150,000 to $225,000 during a period of 6 to 12 months. And the purpose of that is to help you establish technical feasibility and commercial potential. Phase 2 is a follow-on award that can be up to $1 million or more during a period for usually up to 2 years. And that supports further technology research and development and commercialization efforts. Some agencies also issue follow-on awards called Phase 2B, which generally require some form of private and federal match, and those can help with further commercialization efforts. You'll also sometimes hear companies refer to having received a Phase 3 award, and technically that's not a real official stage, not a part of the SBIR program. But what that is usually it refers to direct or sole source procurement of a technology, typically by DoD or NASA. So it could be a company that had SBIR funding and now there's a potential federal procurement application. Usually you won't see that at the Department of Energy. It doesn't do as much acquisition, but your energy technology might be applicable to other agencies. So here's just a few recommendations for how to get ready now to submit your SBIR application for this letter of intent, which, as we'll hear in a moment, is going to be due January 4th. So definitely read the solicitation, submit any technical questions at the links provided, and those will be answered in writing. You can contact the program officers for guidance. They're not going to be able to answer detailed questions relating to your specific application eligibility, but can give you general publicly available information and guidance. You can also reach out to connectors, and we'll be talking more about this later in the webinar. We can be a little bit more free in our advice, but are a step removed from the program. So it's good to talk to kind of both. Get your DUNS and get registered in the SAM now. And if those words mean absolutely nothing to you, you're not alone. I have recently had to go through this process myself. And, so once you start looking at how to go through this, if you have any questions, reach out to me and I might be able to guide you having recently gone through this experience. Try to tee up some letters of recommendation. And the first thing you're going to be doing is submitting a very short letter of intent. It's not very cumbersome. You're describing your technology idea and some of the questions outlined. Definitely go for it. It's not that intimidating. The DOE will tell you if your proposal was a poor fit for the technologies that they're interested in, so you don't waste your time on a full application. If you don't hear anything or you hear, yes, you're eligible, then proceed. And Peter will be going over the deadlines, but you have basically till the end of February to work on the full application. That is a little bit more cumbersome and challenging, but it's definitely doable. And you'll hear from two people today who did this on their own and successfully, really benefited from that. So there are also some resources that can help you with your application, and we will be discussing that momentarily. So with first, I want to turn it over to Peter Lobacaro. And Peter, I'm going to send you an unmute request right now. And Peter is going to tell us a little bit more about this specific SBIR opportunity.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Yes.
Great.
Oh, sorry about that. Let's go back to your slide. There we go.
Yeah, great. Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone on the East Coast. Good morning to the rest of the country. Glad to have you all on this call. As Lynn mentioned, we're going to be talking about CEDO's, the Solar Energy Technologies Office portion of the larger Department of Energy's Small Business Innovative Research call. So just to clarify, this is a subsection of the much larger DOE funding opportunity announcement that's going to be released around SBIR. So you won't see this coming directly from CEDO's office, but we are within this larger Department of Energy SBIR call. There's a section for solar energy, and I'll get into some of those solar topics in just a moment here. But first, Lynn, if we can jump to the next slide, I just want to mention who we are here at CEDO, in case you may not know. Our mission is to accelerate the development and application of technology to advance low-cost, reliable solar energy in the United States. And this involves supporting a wide range of technologies that touch on that touch beyond the core of just solar modules. This includes electronics, grid interactions, concentrated solar thermal power analysis related to the adoption of solar and soft cost reduction, as well as how we can commercialize innovations in the lab to bring them to impact the market. And so CEDO's SBIR program, and Lynn, sorry, I think we have something blocking the slides here a little bit. I'm seeing, yeah, those gray boxes are popping up on top. So we have 5 teams that are supporting all those different technology areas I mentioned, and the SBIR proposal is coming out of the manufacturing and competitiveness team, which is that bottom right box, which is focused on the tech to market sort of journey represented by that road there. So we can go to the next slide. So the technology to market funding that the manufacturing competitiveness team provides is really meant to meet you where you are. So depending on whether you're an individual, a small business, a large business, we have a variety of funding programs that may be right for you. So here we're talking about SBIR, and really, as Lynn mentioned, this has funding of up to $1.3 million over 3 years. You have to be an incorporated small business in order to participate. So if you're an individual with an idea, there may be some other programs that may be a better fit to get you moving before applying to SBIR. That doesn't mean you shouldn't apply to SBIR. We definitely encourage you to, but you have to incorporate and get those things like a dunce number and other things that Lynn mentioned in order to do so. And obviously, if you're a large business, you'd have to look other places as well. This opportunity is only focused on small businesses. Yeah, we can move to the next slide. So what are some of the details about this funding opportunity? We have some key dates here. So it's a little bit confusing, I'm sure. The topics have been released, but the actual funding opportunity announcement has not been released yet, which will have the details of how to apply, what the eligibility requirements are, the review process. All those things will be in that what we call FOA, funding opportunity announcement, that will be released on December 14th. So keep an eye out for that. Should be coming out on Monday. There will be a webinar on this, which is more focused on the process, that will be held on December 18th. CEDO has already held a webinar on our specific topics that you can see a recording of, that I think Lynn will provide in a follow-up email. And then we can go back just for one more second. And then, as I was saying, there's a mandatory letter of intent due January 4th. This is meant to be a pretty lightweight thing, but you have to tell us that you're interested in what you're going to be applying with. And then, as Lynn mentioned, you will only hear back from us if that letter is deemed to be non-responsive. So January 25th is the day to keep an eye out for. If you don't hear something from DOE after January 25th, then that means your letter of intent has been deemed to be not non-responsive, and therefore you would be you can consider that a green light to go submit your full application. I just want to make a note here that even if your application is deemed non-responsive, you will receive some comments and you can still apply with a full application. But just know that it was looked at and thought to be not within the scope of what we were looking for. And then, as Lynn mentioned, the full apps are due February 22nd. So about a month after you should get that notification about non-responsiveness. And again, you won't hear from us unless it's non-responsive. So you won't hear a yes from us to go to the next phase. Okay, next slide, please. So I just want to call your attention to one program that is often overlooked in the application process, and this is the Commercialization Assistance Program. This program can provide additional money on top of the funding you can receive for your R&D activities that are focused on commercialization, so up to $6,500 for a Phase 1 award. But the important thing here is that you have to identify who you want to work with when you apply. This isn't something that can be adjusted retroactively. If you don't pick somebody, you will get the default DOE vendor. But Lynn will tell you about some resources you can use to try to find someone who may be more specific to what you're trying to do to take advantage of this program. So with that, I think I'll just jump in quickly to give an overview of the topics. And again, I'll just say, I've tried to break them into 4 sections here. We have 10 topics in total that can be found in topic 16. So like I said, the solar topics are within this larger DOE, whole of DOE SBIR call. So we are topic 16, and we have one subtopic that's also in topic 20. That's a cross-cutting topic across DOE offices. So the first area is tech transfer opportunities. So these are opportunities where a national lab has provided core technology, and they are soliciting commercialization partners, essentially. So the technology is kind of predefined, and those are the 2 areas, and you actually can reach out to the labs to get a better understanding of what these technologies are in order to provide the best proposal around how to commercialize that technology. Next slide. The next major area of topics is in what I'm calling broadly innovations in solar systems. So here we're looking at floating solar powered aeration systems, solar systems that are resilient both to weather and or to cyber threats. Typically that's kind of an or technology, not really resilient. So those are any sort of your resiliency plays would fit into 16D. 16E is innovations in solar aesthetics, really focused at residential photovoltaic systems, trying to make solar systems more beautiful and bring down that barrier to entry around aesthetics. 16F is commercial and industrial solar systems, so anything that would provide innovation and increased adoption and installation of commercial and industrial sized solar systems. And then 16G is the agricultural solar system. So this is dual use solar, commonly known as agrivoltaics, but the combination of agriculture and solar in a symbiotic way. So that's those topics. And then we also have a topic, next slide, in concentrated solar thermal power, which is 16H, which is really focused on subcomponents for Generation 3 solar thermal systems. And then we have one more area in cross-cutting topic, which is called cable. Cable stands for Connectivity Enhanced Materials for Affordable, Breakthrough, Leapfrog, Electric, and Thermal Applications. And that's why we have an acronym. It's a mouthful, cable. But there is a solar subtopic within that cross-cutting area, 20F, which is focused on photovoltaic modules and system electrical connections. So again, even though it's not in topic 16, this is still a topic that will be reviewed by the Solar Office. And then finally, we have topic 16I, which is the open topic. So if you don't feel like you're a good fit to any of those topics, specific topic areas that I just described, this is the topic you would apply to. Now, we do encourage you to consider, if you are a good fit for those other topics, to apply there and not here. We're really looking only to have stuff in this topic area that isn't a good fit in those other specific topic areas that we already talked about. But I do want to say this, we are open to all ideas that can address those earlier goals I mentioned for our office. And so this is why we have this topic, to catch anything else that we may have missed that could be highly impactful. Is there any more? Maybe one more slide? Anyways, yeah, there's more detail on all of these topics in our FY21 webinar that was recorded. The link is here. I think it'll be shared by email afterwards. If you want more detail on any of those things, I recommend you go watch that webinar. And you can reach out to us if you have questions about the topic language, but as Lynn said, we cannot provide any direct feedback on your concept. If it is, responsive or not responsive, we can't provide any coaching at the DOE on any of your ideas, but we can help you understand what we're looking for in those topic areas. If you have questions, we can answer them in a public forum. So please do reach out if you have questions.
Thank you so much, Peter. And sorry about that. Just a couple of questions that have come up maybe before we go to Nancy that I think were just relevant to this solicitation. And one of those is there any kind of blackout period for submitting your technical questions and getting them answered?
Thank you. I couldn't control my mute. So we can't provide any technical answers as soon as the topics are issued. But you can. There's a place to submit. There is a place you submit. People can submit questions that are general, or process questions.
Exactly.
Yeah. There is, when the FOA is released, there will be an email address that is, you can send all your questions there, and that will. That's the way. If you try to reach out to us directly with questions, we will just redirect you to that inbox, because all the questions will be collated and the answers will be posted in a public way.
Yeah.
So that we can make sure everyone's getting the same information.
Okay, great. And then one other quick question before we go on is if a candidate feels, or an applicant feels that they're a good candidate for multiple topic areas, is there a way to should they just pick one, or should they explain how they relate to multiple?
I believe there's guidance directly on that will be released in the FOA when it is released. So I would recommend people read that document, and then if they have further questions, they can follow up. They can submit multiple, but it's really up to them to decide where to submit.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you so much for your help on that.
Yeah.
Great. So Wonderful. So now we're going to turn it over to two of our prior SBIR recipients who are going to tell us a little bit more about their experience. So I'm going to start with Nancy Min, who is the founder of Ecolong.
Thanks, Lynn. Hi, everyone. This is Nancy Min from Ecolong. Just to quickly give you a little bit of overview on Ecolong. So we're actually based in upstate New York, and we're primarily a blockchain development startup focusing mostly on the clean energy sector. We were founded in 2015, and we've been really lucky to be recipients of the US DOE CTO SBIR, both phase 1 and phase 2, around a blockchain-based advanced peer-to-peer transactive energy platform with predictive optimization. And as part of this journey, we've been partnering with US DOE as well as Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and Brookhaven National Laboratory. And I'll go a little bit more into our project on the next slide. Awesome. Thank you, Lynn. So just to kind of give you a quick overview of our project. So as I mentioned, it's a blockchain-based peer-to-peer transactive energy platform. One of the primary things that we're trying to accomplish with this project is to really create a new energy marketplace, lowering barriers for market participants to be able to trade excess energy. So one of the changes that are occurring with growing penetrations of DERs on the electric power grid has been an increase of solar that are deployed actually on each of our residential rooftops. So as you go through the course of a day, there are certain time periods where you actually don't consume all the energy that are currently on your rooftop. And one thing that you can do with this platform is actually trade with your next door neighbor. So really increasing access for folks to be able to purchase clean energy as a solution, but also be able to sell it and make more increased economic benefits to this. So a couple of things that we're doing as part of this project is we're incorporating advanced monitoring and forecasting solutions, adding in optimization, and the main focus of this is to really empower prosumers, really giving the power to you to be able to improve your visibility, insight, and control into your individual energy consumption and production. On the other end, we also have control technologies, and we're deploying it in a manner that is decentralized and secure using that blockchain technology. And the real focus of that is to really increase grid reliability and resiliency, and to be able to provide demand response, load shifting, and grid and auxiliary services with the overall purpose of improving economic benefits. So trying to decrease the level of the cost of solar electricity, enhancing efficiency, and encouraging higher penetration of DERs on the electric power grid. Lynn, if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And one of the questions that we always get asked, so why blockchain for energy? Most people hear blockchain technology and they think of cryptocurrency. So one of the things that really makes blockchain technologies very different is that decentralized structure. So if you think of like the way that the electric power is generated as is, it's very centralized generation. So you think of like large scale power plants, and that power actually gets sent to your house. So that's really focusing on kind of that one-way power flow, and there's really only need for two-way communication and just a few control points on the overall grid. One of the things that's changing with increasing penetrations of DRs such as solar panels, right, is we're seeing a much more distributed generation across different nodes of the power grid. And that's going to change the way that we interact with it in terms of two-way power flow, multi-way communication, and millions of control points throughout the grid. And that's an area where blockchain technology can play an integral role in matching the architecture of what the future grid is. So the blockchain technology, think of it, it is immutable ledger, it's auditable, there's automation that's enabled through smart contracts, and there's that security level of that encryption. And it's in a manner that is decentralized. So, definitely always interested to speak about blockchain technologies and answer any kind of questions on those, but thank you guys for the time to talk about this.
Great, and thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing this information about your technology, and I think it really, can give participants a sense of the types of things they can make possible with SBIR. So now we're going to turn to Ben Lepley, who is the founder of Tectonicus Constructs, and he's going to tell us about his SBIR innovation.
So I'm Ben Lepley. I'm the owner of Tectonicus Constructs. I'm an architect, so I come from the background of designing and building. We entered into this with an idea of covering and powering canals with solar energy. And so we applied to the rural solar category. We received our SBIR 1 award in 2019, and that really allowed us to grow quite rapidly. We started this idea with myself and Jordan Cantor, the second one down on the left, and then we grew into this very large team with partners. Right now we're in phase 2. We've got patents pending, and we now have a huge collection of very powerful partners that are already full scale. George Cairo Engineers, Lara, the Solar Store, U of A Optics Center, and Shiver Construction, and also the West Center at U of A. And that's really allowed us to become full scale right away, going into phase 2. As designers, we're able to scale up easily. Architects typically design little projects to big projects. Doesn't make that much difference to us. It's really about how can you carry out a project. And we can go to the next slide. So our design is fairly modular and also uses a proprietary backend that helps us design in a modular and automated way. And what you see here is an older render that we have these panels placed over a canal. And next slide. Along this phase 1 adventure, I'd say, we really learned a lot about our clients, our potential clients, rather. What are their needs? What are the complications with this idea as far as canal ownership, as far as power production, tying into existing grids in different areas, right-of-ways, all of these different issues that typical solar installations don't have to deal with. And other issues in regards to, we're pretty much making a new market. So with this market, what is their culture like? How do they approach energy? What are their needs? So I would say this phase 1 has been an incredible opportunity to kind of build out that network and our background of information as far as the market and so forth. And for our project, we were expected to, and we did, dive into all different directions, from GIS analysis of our market, because it's so wide-reaching, to automated design software that we're doing as part of our research, to the structure and the steel and different structures. We tested out 7 or 8 totally different kinds of structures, from Quonset huts to space frames, and we've come down to one super promising one and another backup design that we're going to implement, and we're building for phase 2. And just have to say, this wouldn't have been possible, at least for us, to do without SBIR funding. And it's had a lot of struggles for us scaling up, but I couldn't think of a more perfect program and blueprint to get us where we are and get us where we're still going than this SBIR.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ben. And I think it's great to just see the diversity of kinds of technologies between yours and Nancy's. Yours obviously has a lot of components too, but much more hardware focused and much more rural applications. So thank you. And we'll be hearing from both Nancy and Ben a little bit more in a few minutes as we talk a little bit about their experiences applying for the program. But first, we want to just kind of briefly cover some resources where you can find help on your application. So first of all, there is a government contractor called Dawnbreaker that provides something called DOE Phase 0 And this is technical assistance to first-time applicants. So if you've applied for SBIR before, they consider you, seasoned with the process, and you're not eligible. But it is a competitive and limited amount of funding, but definitely a great resource. I would definitely encourage any first-time applicants to check that out and submit an application. Additionally, I want to talk a little bit about the American-Made Network. The network is a diverse and powerful network consisting of national laboratories, universities, energy incubators, facilities, industry partners, and others essential to the success of new innovations. It was initially set up by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory to help support the Department of Energy's American-Made Challenges program, which is a different DOE program that is a series of prize competitions to help accelerate and sustain energy innovations and scale transformative technology ideas into concepts and then early stage prototypes. I kind of think of it as it's a complement to SBIR, or it's even earlier stage than SBIR in some cases. This network can also be a fantastic resource for applicants who are submitting SBIR proposals. So visit the link that's shown in the upper right corner of the screen, poke around in that network and see what kinds of connectors are most useful to your innovation and what kinds of support that you need. And in addition, there are something called power connectors, which are organizations that are working through a contract with the new National Renewable Energy Laboratory to provide specialized assistance. And for the first time, the DOE is working with some of these power connectors from the American-Made Network to provide support to you on the SBIR application. So these three entities are shown here along with our contact information, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of us and the specific things we can offer to you. So my organization, the CEBN, has a number of resources that could be of service to competitors. First, we're happy to answer questions and give feedback. We're not going to probably be the best people to read in detail your technology solution, but we can help point you in the right direction. We can also help give you recommendations if you're looking for specific kinds of incubators, testing facilities, resources. Just feel free to reach out. And again, our email addresses are all in this slide deck. And I mentioned earlier, I am somewhat familiar with the process of going through the DUNS, the SAM registration. Happy if you are stuck with that process, I can definitely help you with that. And as soon as the full application for SBIR is released, we will definitely be reviewing that in depth so we can provide technical assistance to you. I also want to flag that we have a completely free funding database that provides information, an aggregated list of funding opportunities from a range of government and private sector entities. And so definitely use that as a resource to look for additional sources of support for your innovation. So not represented on the call today, but one of our fellow power connectors is the University of Arizona's Center for Innovation. And it is a science and technology incubator that can help with business plan development, mentorship, product commercialization, tapping into other resources, and access to facilities and equipment at University of Arizona. So definitely feel free to contact them as well. And then finally, I'm going to turn it over to one of our fellow power connectors, which is Frank. Frank Yang, who is from let me see if I can find you, Frank, in the list. There we go. Frank Yang is with ADL Ventures, and so he's going to tell us a little bit more about the resources ADL has to offer.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Frank Yang. I'm a partner with ADL Ventures. Just a little bit about my background. Spent over 10 years in the solar industry as the co-founder and running all of the commercial operations for Scion. So we actually built one of the only high-volume manufacturing plants in the U.S., and we were doing thin film, and we're also vertically integrated into project development. And one of the unique things about ADL is that actually all the partners are not only partners of ADL, which is primarily doing different forms of innovation consulting, but we're also entrepreneurs ourselves. So right now I run an insulation material startup, and we're actually an NSF SBIR recipient. So it's been through the DOE program before, been through other SBIRs, and I'm currently going through one. So I'd like to share just a little bit about what ADL does and, also what our formal engagement with, DOE and NREL is on this project so we can aim to provide maximum value in our power connector role. So we can go to the next slide. So if you think about ADL Ventures, what we do is, like I said, we call it venture consulting or innovation consultings, and our primary clients are corporate and government clients. And if you think about what we do, everything sort of falls into two general categories, and we classify that as either spinning in or spinning out, novel technologies. So our core product, which was developed with funding originally from the DOE Innovative Pathways Program, is an engine called Problem Space, and we run open innovation challenges, and this technology can be used for challenges, prizes, any other type of recruitment-oriented exercise. So in our role as a power connector for NREL, we're doing recruitment using a combination of network-based and technology-based approaches. And so certainly part of our involvement in this program is to spread the word and to let all of you on the call know that hey, we welcome not only your applications but referrals to other people that may have applications as well. And then on the other end, we also do what's called spinning out technology. We have a product called Monetizing Innovation, which basically involves going into a corporate or government entity and then helping them unlock value out of technologies that are being developed or maybe have sat latent for a while. So probably the best example of this was we recently spun a software company out of the California utility PG&E. And I think a lot of the other work we do with DOE, the Building Technologies Office and other groups, centers around scaling of technology. So they may not necessarily lead to companies. Some may become national lab projects or other initiatives, but it all has to do with sort of taking technology closer to the market. So next slide. So we like to call ourselves a do tank as opposed to a think tank. Our projects are, although consulting might be sort of the closest thing you would compare it to, it's really about going into a company and providing operational support and really sort of plugging into that company and becoming part of what we call the scaffolding or the infrastructure for their efforts. So ADL has a couple of different initiatives that Lynn asked me to highlight, and I want to just break it down in terms of the type of constituency that we help. As I mentioned, some of our clients are very large sectors in these energy-related legacy sectors like buildings and utilities. So PG&E is an example. Stowe, which is a large building products company, is another example. So we've run things like the Building Materials Challenge for Stowe. We ran a Woody Biomass Challenge for PG&E around how to mitigate some of the vegetation supply challenges from the wildfires. And right now, as you may have seen on our website, we're running an Ignition Prevention Challenge for PG&E as well. So we have a lot of experience in helping startups, helping corporates identify and vet suitable startup technologies, as well as helping them, launch promising technologies into the marketplace. So I think certainly in our mentorship role, one of the things we hope to deliver to the applicants is an understanding of, how the technology you're developing might then go to that next step with a corporate partner, because that becomes a very, very important part, not only of the phase one, but then particularly the phase two criteria. And then ADL does do some direct work with, startups. As I mentioned, we've spun out startups on behalf of major corporations. So FieldNav, which came out of PG&E, is a software startup that just launched, recently. And then we do have a couple of startup clients. So General Radar, which is a Kleiner Perkins portfolio company in the radar space. We are doing a project for them now. We've done some other projects for startups where the focus is really on helping them identify and secure a first customer and then driving other sort of key operational and strategic initiatives. So these are a little bit less common for us, but nonetheless, like I said, all 5 ADL partners have started companies, run companies. Most of them have companies of their own that they're running right now. So in terms of how to get the business off the ground, including using DOE awards as a non-dilutive, tool. That's an area where we have a lot of expertise. And lastly, of course, we're working with the, major government entities on different commercialization programs, and I would classify those in two general areas. One being, like I said, tech scaling, operational scaling of promising technologies, whether they're developed internally by entities like national labs or they're developed externally and are coming through a collaborative or some other type of program that's run by the federal government. And then lastly, of course, the American-made network. So we're a power connector for the American-made solar network, and we're also a program-wide power connector for all the American-made challenges. So through that role, we have a pretty deep involvement in sort of that startup to corporate interface, as well as sort of understanding the ambitions and challenges of startups that are applying to these prizes. So we can go to the next slide. So this is a team, as I mentioned, partner at ADL, currently run Leatris, which is an insulation material startup, and then was previously in the solar business. I also spent some time at Nantero and Pixtronics, which were two advanced materials companies that were later sold to larger incumbents in their spaces. So I've spent the better part of my career in the advanced materials domain, although, like I said, since Scion was vertically integrated and I'm now working at ADL on a lot of stuff with BTO. I understand, sort of the delivery and the project development part of the value chain somewhat as well. Chris Richardson, who's my partner, he's really the person that's led all the work with product work with NREL, so understands a lot about, again, startup commercialization. He was at Enernoc, so he's our utilities expert as well. And then we have two other partners that were in the solar industry as well. And Yan, who's our project manager for this initiative. Some of you have probably met her, virtually or been on calls with her. So she has a very strong technical background. She did all the assistance work for the American-made Solar Prize applicants, so has a lot of experience working with potential applicants, to sort of get them through navigate them through the tricky process of, meeting some of these, requirements. So I think in general, this is our first effort working with SBIR. Very excited to do that and convey some of our, experiences, what to do, and I think more importantly, sometimes what not to do, which we've learned from mistakes. And so we would characterize ADL support as being, fairly general and open. I think that the technical mandate from DOE and from CETO is to, really mentor applicants, and particularly to encourage first-time applicants and, applicants from sort of non-traditional areas of solar, to come in and apply. So one thing I'll say in closing is that the solar industry right now, there's a lot of momentum and a lot of change. I think a lot of things like storage, BIPV, that have been developed for a long time are now finally coming to the forefront. That creates a lot of opportunity for technology providers like yourself, for those of you that are on this panel and thinking about applying. So what we would encourage you to do is, take a close look at the program. Don't be intimidated and come to ADL for help earlier rather than later, because I think we would sort of classify ourselves as any type of question you have. Don't think of that as being off the table. But I think also to Peter's point, one thing that we do want to add is that we're not involved in the selection process. So I think the good part of that is you shouldn't be intimidated by asking, ADL for help. Similarly, we can't tell you whether something is, going to have a good chance of applying, but we certainly have a lot of experience in terms of like building solid business fundamentals for startups. And I think you should be thinking about that in the I think in the vein of, hey, if I develop something that has good product market fit and is compelling, it could be valuable for DOE, SBIR, but most certainly even if it isn't, it then ultimately will be deployed on another grant opportunity. We'll find some other, avenue for commercialization. And I think very often it's not the first try, but it's the second or the third or even the fourth or beyond that ultimately, ends up being successful. So we're here not only for this process, but also to help you, move forward in the overall process of building your company and commercializing your technologies. So I understand there's going to be some question and answer time, and certainly feel free to reach out to us offline as well. But that's a little bit of a flavor of what ADL is doing. And I would just wrap by saying that we have our own webinar after the FOA comes out on the 16th. There we'll have a little bit more time to get into some things like industry trends, what's in the FOA, although not detailed because Peter has a separate session on that, and also sort of common traps, common issues, because I think there are a few things that people tend to get hung up on, which we can articulate in a little bit more detail in that call. So it's really exciting to engage with all of you, and really look forward to working with some of you as we go through this process.
Great. Thank you so much, Frank. And I think that will be a terrific resource for so many of our attendees. So I'm going to unmute our panelists, and I would just ask if we have any background noise to mute on your computer individually rather than on the WebEx. Just use your microphone button. But I want to bring all of our panelists back into the conversation, and folks should feel free to maximize the video view if you would like it. I'll just kind of keep this slide up here as background. But thank you all again so much for taking the time to share your perspective. So I wanted to start with just a general question for our panelists on, can you talk a little bit more beyond the funding? What are some of the benefits that applicants receive from this SBIR program?
I can answer that. I think, funding is important, but one thing that I discovered through the application process for us was kind of the intricate way the SBIR questions in the and FOA as well were laid out. So when you get your topic, you know what you're going to apply for, and how they set everything up really is kind of this ingenious blueprint of both how to take your idea to market, but also how to set up a competitive business that is commercializable. You can do this with only SBIR funding, but it's really the value is in everything else that you kind of set up along the way and the hard questions that they ask in answering the different FOA questions. Obviously, the prospective applicants in this call haven't yet gotten a FOA yet, but the questions really range everything from, what is your invention to how are you going to carry it to market, and what are the what size of the market is it, who exactly are your potential clients, how are you going to build this thing, how are you going to capture your intellectual property that you create and then protect it at the same time. All of these various questions really become this intricate kind of network of, oh, well, this is the path, and you can see the path because of the questions they're asking. And so if you've never done an SBIR application before or brought an invention to market before, I mean, just that path alone is like, the trail up to the summit of a mountain that other people have hiked, and you've got something to follow. And it's not like these questions are a pain in the butt to answer or anything. They are, but they're also very important. And there's no question that I remember answering that wasn't pertinent or wasn't not needed. Some were easy to answer. Others were just like, we had to invent things and research things just to answer the question. So, but that was a learning process. And so even if we hadn't have gotten the SBIR award, we would have then still had this incredible blueprint that we could have used for private funding, or any other resource. All of that research just to answer the SBIR questions would have been done. And done in a timely manner because we had a deadline. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's helpful. Any other panelists want to chime in on this? So I set an unmute request. Perfect.
Okay. So I'd love to just add a couple comments to that. I mean, I think one thing that I would think about here with the SBIR is, I think Ben talked a little bit about the discipline of going through the process and building your business. I think if you get it, the credibility that you get out of it is very important, because I think even in the last 5 to 10 years, I've seen a dramatic change in startup fundraising. And I would start this with the caveat that, hey, even if you get SBIR, as Lynn mentioned, there are administrative, sales and marketing and other things you still need to raise money for. So there's probably no way to ultimately get from point A to point B without raising other funding to complement that. And I think probably in almost any SBIR, your ability to get to phase 2 will be somewhat determined by some indication of commercial viability. And so if you think about that today, there's tons of different opportunities for people to raise money, whether it's through angel platforms, crowdfunding. There have been not only more VCs, but pre-VC type investors that are getting in the space. Everybody's trying to hunt for a different way to make returns, but there's also way more startup companies, and there's the liquidity of the interactions is also much more significant than it was before, because anybody can go on a platform now and try to raise money through a crowdfunding vehicle. Anybody can get on an angel platform or pitch a group of angels. So I think you need something to set you apart. So I think part of it is the operational and technical discipline that you do get by going through the process, and then part of that is also the just a stamp of approval that you get from receiving the SBIR. But I think certainly if ADL had this sort of takeaway, give you sort of one key takeaway about applying for this program, it's that, like, I think being an entrepreneur involves dealing with a lot of rejection and a lot of learning. So I think you should go into this program actually expecting that you're going to be rejected, but they're thinking that, hey, if the likely outcome is rejection, so that's still a great learning experience, and that if not this time, then at some point, if you continue to craft your application and have a good value proposition, you will get it. So I think you have to have the patience and the tolerance to sort of ultimately, get to that point, because, like, I think even as somebody who's now done a couple of companies and has gone through the process a couple of times, I mean, 90% of the conversations where you're asking for some type of commercial funding or strategic partnership, I mean, maybe it's more like 99% are going to ultimately result in a rejection. But I think the other way that you can look at that is, like, every one of these experiences that you build up, it's really free learning because you get access to a lot of market experts. In this case, you're reading through FOA that's already been developed by industry experts and already identified some pretty well-scoped areas of opportunity. So I think you just have to take that all as an opportunity to build your business and improve your business. And so at the end of the day, it's not just about applying for the phase 1 and getting the phase 1. I mean, obviously that's a big part of why you're doing this, but it's the process of building your business and growing your business. And you're going to find every few months you're going to learn things that allow you to refresh your business plan and improve your business plan. So there's a big part of that as well, because as you go through the commercialization assistance program and all those other things, those have an invaluable impact on your business. And it's very often some idea or some lead that you didn't really think was going to turn into anything, ultimately ends up turning into something that can really build or change your business.
I would definitely agree. Yeah, Nancy, please chime in.
Yeah, just one other thing to add, and I think, Ben and Frank had touched on some really good points, but one thing I didn't know going into the grant funding was that you actually get access to DOE program managers, and each of the program managers have a deep experience in a variety of areas of solar. And one of the great things I found is, like, getting to, like, kind of bounce ideas off of them, iterate on the development process, and then, like, work with them directly to explore, like, new types of growth avenues. And one thing I like to say is just, like, it's kind of like having an advocate for you. They'll be there to cheer you on when you succeed, and they'll also be there, like, and help you out when you face certain types of challenges. And that's something that I didn't know, which is also great in addition to money.
That's great. And I definitely heard all the things you guys are saying echoed by so many of the prior SBIR recipients we've worked with. So Frank started this topic a little bit, but let's touch on what makes an application successful. And do you have any sort of tips on common mistakes to avoid?
Absolutely. I think, we've touched on this a little bit, but I think what makes an application very competitive is, your innovation, as well as something that's, like, well thought out. So you've kind of done the research, you understand kind of the landscape of what you're trying to tackle, and you get that field pretty well. What I would say is, like, one of the very, like, really common mistakes is just not fully reading through the funding opportunity announcement. And that's coming out, I believe, in December 14th. Make sure that you read that very thoroughly, and you're also reading in carefully the topics and making sure that you're answering it to the T. And I think that's something that's just the most important to keep in mind.
That's great. Any other feedback? Okay, great. Well, we can come back to that if any of the other panelists have thoughts on what they'd like to share. So some companies who have never applied for SBIR might be somewhat intimidated by the process. So I guess this is particularly for Ben and Nancy. Can you talk us through a little bit your experience navigating the process, and if you have any tips or suggestions for resources that would be helpful?
Yeah, certainly. So Lynn, I think you guys, like in the presentation, it kind of alluded to this, but there's the Phase Zero program that's currently available, and it's actually funded and supported by DOE, and it's actually administered by Dawnbreaker. So one of the things I think for us, we were kind of a first-time applicant, just really unfamiliar with the overall, application process. What Phase Zero does is you really get like an a la carte menu, and you get to select different things along that menu that kind of help you with any of the problem areas that you think that you have. So if it's like market, research, you can select that, and they would help you generate a report so that you can better understand what your market landscape is. And while the Phase Zero program isn't available for everyone, they do have certain types of requirements to participate. One of the other things is the website that they have for Phase Zero. So if you go to their website, there are actually really detailed videos and documentation PDFs that you can read through to understand each of the sections within the funding opportunity announcement. So each of those topics, to make sure that you're phrasing your answers and responses in the way that will resonate the most with your reviewers. So that's just something else to make sure that you're also looking at.
Yeah, I did see that as well. That's great. That's a great tip.
Yeah, that's a great point, Nancy. One of the areas that we needed the most help from for Phase Zero was setting up our back-end accounting, getting what's called the indirect rate to be appropriate. We had never done an indirect rate calculation before, which is basically with your overheads, for lack of a better term. And getting that then approved, which happens if you get awarded. But they partner with an accounting firm that has a lot of experience with DOE accounting and FAR compliant accounting, and that was a huge help. And that we were able to hire accountants and tell them, okay, this is how everything's set up. This is how we need to keep our books for future audits, and this, that, and the other thing. That, for me, was actually the hardest part of the whole application process. The science of it, all the other stuff we kind of knew. That's more of our expertise. But yeah, some of that back end. Another thing, also a back end thing, is just make sure, even before you start answering all the fun questions about the science or your invention, really make sure you get all of your DUNS, SBA, SAM, FedConnect, PAMs, all of this like huge network of federal registrations. Get all that stuff out of the way, including insurance. You're going to need like all kinds of liability insurance, this and the other thing. I don't know if you actually have to sign up for those right at that point, but it needs to be ready to go when you get your award,
right,
including the accounting stuff. So get all that stuff out of the way first, because sometimes those things have a lead time that you can't control, because you're depending on an outside, organization to double check things. So do that stuff first, so that you're not fretting at the last minute when you should be wordsmithing and building up your bibliography and fact checking your claims and stuff like that. Get all that tedious stuff out of the way first, and that stuff will be done if you want to apply for different SBIR or different funding or even a federal client. That stuff will still be needed anyway, so it's a total not a waste of time. So.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that from my own experience. And I just want to note, I opened a quick little audience poll, so welcome. This kind of intel will be really helpful for all of us, I think, in helping applicants. So feel free to click on your answers to that. I'm going to pepper in some of the audience questions we've received as we're about to run out of time. But one of the questions is, how do you find the right expert within the national laboratories? And I want to point out a good resource called the Lab Partnering Service that people should know about, where it's a wonderful database where you can go in and put parameters on what kinds of expertise you're looking for from the national labs. So I wanted to flag that. So I guess we're very close to the end of time, and I would say if we didn't get to your question, feel free to email me afterwards. But I just want to close with one final question for all our panelists and see if there's one really important piece of advice that we have not yet shared on this webinar that you would want to convey to prospective applicants.
I could maybe start on behalf of DOE. I really want to say that we really feel strongly and take seriously the idea of inclusivity and making this program approachable to everyone, which is why we have rolled out the resources that we've tried to roll out and why we're joining in on webinars like this. And so I just want to say, don't, as much as you're able to, don't be intimidated by the process. Take advantage of the resources that are in front of you. And we hope that you will consider applying for our funding, because we end up, in the end, we have funding available and we can only choose from those who apply. So if you don't apply, we can never select you. So just keep that in mind, and we encourage you to try to take advantage of all these things. And we look forward, hopefully, to seeing your application and working with you in the future.
Excellent. That's great. Go ahead, Frank. Oops, sorry. There we go.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple quick things before we close. You had asked what makes an effective application, and I think that ends up, especially with an industry as broad as solar across the value chain, ends up being much more specific, because like every project and every technology is going to have different things that are worth consideration, which is why I think, like I said, we're moving toward a little bit more customized approach for mentoring, and hoping that that's really going to invite some of the first-time traffic that Peter's talking about. So I think any of that can be handled offline. Feel free to contact Yan and myself on that front. But I would say, just from a general standpoint, I think the thing that Ben said was like 100% on target, because there are a lot of things that vary by technology, and maybe some of those things you can't even fully control, like, for example, whether you get good technical results next week. But with grants applications, there's a bunch of things that you can control, like, getting the registration, getting the right format that complies with the FOA. So, like, I think the number one thing is just take care of all the things you can control that are easy to do, that don't require, like, inventing or selling or all the things that are actually hard, because like once you do it, it becomes very replicable. But if you don't build that foundation, it becomes hard to ever do an effective application. So I think from a more general interest standpoint, like we would reinforce that's probably like the number one thing that we would focus on. And then certainly happy to answer some questions in the follow-up conversations that we'll have with people. But then we really hope that the follow-up conversations will be more geared around customized things that will help your specific application once you've gotten those general things out of the way.
That's terrific.
I would say the barrier to entry is financially was free. Like all these registrations, all of these things were absolutely free. The tricky part was finding an accountant that would help us a little bit for free, and then if we got the grant, they would become our accountant. But it seemed to me that really the barrier of entry was how strong is your idea. And how strong will it be in the marketplace? Should it be commercialized? And how clear was your application? And that became especially apparent when we got the feedback from the reviewers. So that's really what they were looking for.
That's terrific. Well, we'll end there. I'm sorry that we didn't get to go through more of the questions. There was a lot of great questions, but again, feel free to contact me, Frank, the University of Arizona. You have all of our contact information. We will circulate the slides and the recording, and definitely reach out. We're happy to try to connect you to the right people to answer any questions you might have. So thank you, everyone.